All right, welcome. For tonight, we have 6 total in the class. 2 have let me know they're not going to come tonight. My name is Ken Miller. I'm the Public Information Officer, and I'll be communicating with you like I have been throughout the class. Tonight and several nights, we will be meeting here. Finance Department, Police Department will meet here. Next month, and I'm not recalling October, whatever the second Wednesday is in October, we will be meeting down at the Street Department. And I will send you emails, probably more than you care to get, reminding you of that. If you're not familiar with where the Street Department is, think IHOP, make the right there on, was that Fairlane? Yeah. And then you kind of wind around, you'll see it behind the fence there. The fence will be open. We'll let you in, open arms. So that's what's going to happen next time. You did all, I hope, get the email about our water situation here. If you hear something gurgling in the next half an hour, it's not my stomach. It might be that the bathrooms are coming back online, so we'll see. So we'll play that by ear. I will send you emails tomorrow that it'll have a QR code on it and a link so that you can tell us what we did well tonight, what we didn't do well tonight, and any other suggestions, and I will do that after every class. And that's how that's the well-oiled machine that you're going to see. You are benefiting from 15 classes of this, so we're trying to learn as we go along. Okay. All right. I'm trying to think anything else before we got. I did want. Go ahead, Zach.
No. So I know you're giving these to us. Are these for us to take home and keep? Can I write in this? Or is it
You can write in this. I know last class was a good example. Half the people wanted to follow along on digital, iPads, whatever.
Yeah.
If you would rather have that, I will not kill the trees, and I will, like I did.
No, I like this. That's
Okay, and if you guys like this, we'll keep doing that too. We've got, I think you all should have gotten the email that had this attached to it, so you'll have that. And like I said, I'm going to be recording these, so especially with the classes that are going to be here, let's say whenever February we do finance, and for some reason you can't make that, no fear, because the next day I will email you a link or a YouTube link, and you'd be able to watch it that way. Okay. Water over here if you get thirsty, although without bathrooms, maybe you don't want to chance that. I do want to point this out. This is going to be part of a mailer you're going to get, and I know both the mayor and Tim are going to talk a little bit about the upcoming vote, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, being the good citizens you are taking this class. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our mayor, and that is Tony McNeill, and he was elected mayor in 2020, but he's been with us on the city council since 2009. He's been a resident of Lansing since 2002. He retired from the Marine Corps in 2005 and is serving as the Deputy Director of the U.S. Army Sharp Academy on Fort Leavenworth. He's got a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of South Dakota and a Master's degree in Human Resource Management from Webster University. And as you will find out when I introduce Tim, you will then understand why the Lansing Leadership Pipeline originates at the University of South Dakota. Okay. All right. Mayor McNeill enjoys the Royals, which means you haven't enjoyed it since 2015, right?
I like the young kids. Come on.
Okay, all right. Fishing and home improvement projects as well. He's been married to Nina since '83. 3 children, 2 sons, Tyler, who is a Lansing High School graduate in 2007. He's also a Washburn University graduate in 2012. Sam, who graduated from Lansing High in 2013 and attends the University of Kansas. And daughter Ellie, a Lansing High School graduate in 2009 and a KCK Community College graduate in 2012. The McNeills have 5 granddaughters, and I know I updated it this time, so I know one of them is very young. Sophie, McKinley, Sadie, Addie, and it's Palmer. Palmer. Okay. All right. It's Tony McNeill time.
Okay. Thanks. Appreciate that. Thanks for the introduction. It's more than I knew about myself. All right. So introductions, I would like just for you to tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're taking the class, just so I can kind of know you. So you can go first on the left. Okay.
We have 2 daughters, Natalie, who's a senior at Lansing, and Nora, who's a first grader. So there's 11-year spread there.
Yeah.
Keeps us busy. I actually work for Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Oh, okay.
Family programs, and so work with a lot of like Section 8 properties and taken the class. I have had an interest, and I always read the newsletter that comes out and everything, but my sister twisted my arm to take it with her, so.
Perfect.
Yes, right.
It's a handoff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Krista Holland. Our family grew up in Tonganoxie, went to Tonganoxie schools, but I went to Emporia State for college and then moved to Tulsa, and have lived in Tulsa the last 20 plus years. I won't completely date myself, but I've done a pretty good job. So anyway, our family's just moved back just to be closer to family, so
Okay.
obviously I have a sister in Lansing, but parents in KCK and a brother in Lawrence, and so.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
kind of
Yeah.
black sheep, I guess, so.
She's missing out.
Yeah. So anyway, I live with my husband and two boys. So we've got boys in 3rd grade at Lansing and 1st grade
Okay.
at Lansing. And I'm a CPA, although I have a lot of experience in public accounting, but I'm working at Citizens Federal.
Okay.
Bank now, so just as of this summer. So we just moved this summer, and I'll pass it off to Emma, who is actually my neighbor.
Emma.
We are next door neighbors.
Both new.
Did not plan this.
Right.
Okay, so I'm Emma. Emma Njoku. And my husband and I recently moved this summer. We bought a house from John Dalton, interestingly.
Yeah.
So I had no idea he was very involved, which is great.
Yeah.
We have 7 kids from kindergarten, I forget sometimes.
They're all in school.
Yes, all school
Right.
ages, kindergarten to 8th grade, 5 boys and 2 girls. We are always busy.
Oh, yeah.
Hence, we're here. I mean, we've always been involved in wherever the Army sends us. He's an active duty, he's a signal officer. I work in data analytics and manage IT projects. And I'm hoping this would be it for us. He's been in now for at least 16 years. So we need to plant down roots. And Kansas seems like the place everyone comes and retires. It happens. I'm hoping that when he's TDY now, so I'm hoping that when he's in, he can come and attend these classes with me. I know he'd love to. So.
Okay. Nice to meet you.
My name is Zach Bolin. When my parents got married, my parents were divorced, and when my dad got remarried back in '91, married Teresa, who lived in Lansing, and so visited here for a few years, and then moved here permanently in 8th grade. So graduated from Lansing
Oh, okay.
High School in '99, and I went to Ozark Christian College, Bachelor of Biblical Literature, and then I work at Wallula Christian Church.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I'm the student pastor there, so I work with middle school, high school, and been there for about 17 years, which is a long time for a youth pastor.
Yeah.
But I love it. And then in the process, met Tim. He goes there, and our kids are the same age, so just over the years of knowing Tim and hearing about the class and some of our mutual friends have taken him before, and so it was actually because of Tim, he posted it online, like if anybody's interested on Facebook. It's like, I think I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So excited to do it. I've heard about this for a long time, and just I've been in this community for after college, 2004, I think. So I just feel like, man, I don't know much about the inner workings, and been here long enough. I thought I should know more. So
Yeah, well, Ken told you a little bit about my family. I'll tell you the story on how I became involved in what I would call municipal politics, because really it's, at the city level, at municipal level, you don't run party affiliated, right? It's nonpartisan. We're here to fix holes, get the streets, take care of the city itself. So there's not a lot of infighting between conservatives and liberals, I guess I would say it that way. However, when I moved to Lansing in 2002, the first thing, we got off post because we had a dog. And my wife didn't like walking down 2 stories of stairs to go walk the dog, right? Or take groceries up. I didn't prefer that either. So we said, hey, I'm getting ready to retire. I was at the Marine Corps detachment there, teaching at the college. And so we said, well, let's look around. So we found a house that was just being built in Lansing, so my wife wanted to have her footprint on some of the stuff. So we moved to Lansing 2002. Because I had a dog, I wanted to build a fence, right? I mean, I don't want the dog to just, we had him on one of those long lines that it could run back and forth, but we're like, okay, we need to build a fence. So in order to build a fence, you need a fence permit. You can ask Tim and some of the other folks. So my neighbor at the time worked for Public Works, so I said, hey, how do I get this whole permit thing going? He said, hey, you come with me to the meeting, and I'll introduce you and tell them what you want to do, right? So he's like, it shouldn't be a problem. It was across an easement, which was the issue, right? So that person didn't show up, right? So I came to the meeting and was introduced by, hey, we have somebody here with a fence permit that wants to, or is asking for a fence permit, wants to put a fence across an easement. We normally don't do that or approve that. You're on, to me. I was like, what? Like, that wasn't what the guys, So I was like, set up, right? So, I mean, the two ward members from my ward, I kind of figured they'd say, hey, we'll back the guy or whatever. But the one guy on this end was not so happy with me trying to put a fence in. So I remembered that, and after the meeting I said, I'm running against you in the next election. And I ran against him in the next election and beat him. And then I was on the council, as Ken said, until 2 years ago when I ran for mayor. I got the fence permit. It was 5-3, but what really irritated me was one of the guys from my own ward didn't vote in my favor, which I hold a grudge. I'm sorry, I mean, so, yeah, so how much do you remember from high school government? Anything? I mean, yeah, me either. So I wasn't, so forms of government in Kansas, right? So there's all kinds of forms of government at the municipal level. Typically, it's a mayor, council, kind of like we have here. Sometimes it's a mayor, council, manager, or city administrator, which we started, I can't remember, Ken, but you could probably tell us when we started the manager role in hiring a city manager.
It might have been the 80s.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're doing the mayor council thing prior to that, which is the most popular form of government across Kansas. But there are some others. Leavenworth uses a commission. You can see them. They rotate amongst each other. Not rotate, I think they vote amongst the commission who will play mayor for a 2-year term, right? So they just kind of rotate. It's a 1 year?
They only have a mayor for one.
Really?
They only have a mayor for 1 year at a time?
Wow, I thought it was 2. Okay. No, that's even easier. Move over there. No, just kidding. Yeah, so there's different types. We use a mayor, council, and a city administrator. As you can see, Tim Vandall, the city administrator, he's a contracted employee. So we contract with him for, is it a 3-year contract or a 2-year contract, 4-year contract? We just upped it, whatever it is. He's still in. As long as we keep giving him raises, he said he'll stay. But then you have your ward. So I don't know which ward you guys are in. You can probably see by the colors on here and where you live which ward you are, right? And then who your ward reps are.
I mean, I can see where.
Oh, man. I was building them all. Okay, so those are your reps.
We're in, Emma and I are too.
We're right, so where green goes all the way down.
Right here?
Right underneath Gilman. That's
Yeah.
where we moved.
Okay.
And we're right on the cusp of that, because we're right on that road.
Yeah, that's the one
Our
kind of
backyard
weird
goes up-
area where we had to dip into a
Our
neighborhood.
backyard goes up to Willow Park, so it's kind of in that whole section. So I don't
Yeah, so you're either in Ward 2 or 3.
know. Right.
When you guys get your voting registration stuff from the county, it should say on there which ward, and then which ward you're in will impact where you cast your ballot. So,
Where does Ward 3 vote?
Ward 3 and Ward 4 vote at St. Francis.
San Francis,
Sales
the
Church.
sales is normally where we vote.
In Ward 2?
Ward 2 votes in the basement here, and Ward 1 votes at the fire station.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'll get that in a card. If you don't know who your reps are, those are your reps. So those are the council members. They each hold a 4-year term. We typically offset, so I believe Greg Bueller will be next up in the next election. So you always have a council member that's on there from the ward as you rotate the new one in. So there's only a 2-year overlap between all of them. I used to be in Ward 4. I now live in Ward 3. Not that it matters because I know all the council members well. The mayor is elected at large, but all of those ward members, you only vote for those folks within that color code, right? So when you vote, you're only voting for these guys. So it's
Is their
by
job just
ward.
to represent your section, or?
Yeah, I mean, really, the job of these folks is to bring forth any issues from their ward, and at the same time, on larger city issues, they need to think citywide. Even though it may not be in the best interest of their ward, they have to also look citywide and take a bigger picture. Sometimes it's a conflict, right? I mean, so we've had some that we just won't budge on issues, but that's fine too. They're your representatives. So, saying that, you can also call your representatives. If you're having any issues, you should always be calling your ward reps first and saying, "Hey, what's going on with this?" And then they'll typically get back to you pretty quick. Okay, so what's my role? As far as legislative role, when you have a mayor, council, city administrator, my role is more of, referee. I mean, I'm up there basically running the meetings. I don't really get to vote. The council is who votes on issues, unless it's a sticky issue, when it's typically a tie, and then they give the mayor a vote, right? So if it's a contentious thing, I'll bring one up, which was the mask mandate. I don't know if you remember that, but the mask mandate was up, and there were some strong feelings on both sides, and it was going to be a 4-4 tie, which was going to make me have to say we either wear masks or not wear masks. Fortunately, a couple of the anti-mask guys were gone, or the pro-mask guys were gone, and the anti-mask won, and it was over. I didn't have to vote, but that's when you would get to vote if you're the mayor. So that's kind of it. I do run the meetings, right? So I don't know if you've ever heard of Robert's rules, right? He's an old Army, I think he was a colonel or lieutenant colonel who came up with these rules of procedure for assemblies mainly, but that's carried over. There is no mandate from the state on how to do it, just that you have rules, right? So we've adopted those rules to run our meetings. So I kind of have to make sure we're in compliance with that, and that's one of the jobs I get to do. Set goals. I basically talk with the council members on setting goals for the city administrator, so he can manage what the council wants him to get done in the city. And then communications, right? I mean, most of you guys would know what a mayor does. I run around and, cut ribbons and say thank you for coming tonight. I meet other governments. I talk to developers. So, I mean, mainly do most of that kind of communications. Like I said, representative of the city. That is a shared responsibility. If I'm not available or Tim's not available, we'll use a city council member who will go represent the city at a function or something. I think, did anybody go to the Christmas thing last year? No? I think you were there. Okay. Yeah. Because Greg Bueller was the guy who was up there. I was in Las Vegas at an economic development convention. So it was tough. What's that?
You do the Independence Day.
I do the Independence Day. You might have seen me on the stage. I'm trying to kick that DJ off. He wouldn't stop. Yeah. So I was doing that. That's an example. Compliance with the law, I kind of already talked about. The Kansas Open Meeting Act is kind of a pretty important law, which basically says you have to have open meetings if you are making any kind of legislative decisions, like a couple, more than a quorum, I think. You can't just get like the council member, 3 council members get together and go, hey man, let's vote this down or whatever. I mean, you can't have those kind of meetings. The only meetings we can have that are kind of not public, which are executive sessions, which have to do with hiring and firing people or purchasing land, things we don't want the public to get out and act on before we have a chance to do it. Typically when we come out there, we say there's no binding. Things have happened since we've been in there. So the governing body's focus, and I'll just say this for 23, is community growth, land use development, capital improvements. And when I talk about some of the projects we got on, you'll kind of understand where they're coming from in these areas. So city projects. I think, Tim, did you brief city projects last time? And then I got mad at you because you had all the cool stuff and I had all the boring stuff, and I was like, dang, you have to tell them all the cool stuff. So town center, you probably know that area across the street, Sonic on one end, the bank on the other, and nothing in the middle but a bunch of land. That was owned by some developers down in Overland Park for, since
15, 20 years?
Yeah, a long time. Who brought us quite a few nice ideas, but always with a tag to the city. Like, I mean, it was your land, you develop it. But they were always asking us for money. Like, they had a couple good projects that we were like, yeah, man, that sounds great. And then they said, well, we need you to pump in $5 million. And we're like, no, wait, what are you talking about? So in 2020, we bought it. So we kind of got tired of just waiting for it to develop. Now we own it. So now you guys can really pick on us if we don't get anything in there. We have 41 acres. You guys have probably seen the family eye care construction going on there, so they're kind of the first ones in. We're working on quite a few others that really can't publicly talk about yet, but there's a lot of interest since we've owned it. There's 10 times more interest in the property than there was previously.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Are you guys looking to put like, you can't say, but like the family eye care thing, like a bunch of things, or like one big anything?
One development, or
Yeah.
oh, you mean like
Like an Ace Hardware, or something that would take up
Oh.
a lot of space for the whole thing, or is it just going to be like a bunch of businesses, or like one big business?
well, we did a citizen survey and asked them what they would like in that area. I can tell you that there was a lot of interest in a grocery store. There was a lot of interest in, I want to say, a hobby
Like a craft
store, like
store,
craft
yeah.
hobby store, a sit-down restaurant. So what we've done is take those kind of priorities that the citizens said they wanted and start going after trying to capture some of those, right? Typically what you hear from developers or the folks that own those businesses is, well, yeah, we'd love to go there, but we don't want to be the first one there. It's just like, well, somebody has to be the first one there, right? I mean, we're kind of really happy about family eye care because we got something there, right? I mean, that'll start other folks looking at it. But we have taken what the citizens, their priorities, and we have, when we go out to these things like I did in December, start targeting those kind of those businesses to see if they can get them to come here.
And are those lots spoken for now? Are they pre-leased or?
No, we own them, right? So we own them. None of the lots that I know of are previously are spoken for.
Yeah, I mean, none of them, other than family eye care, none of them have been sold yet. But like the mayor alluded to, there's a lot of discussions and things going on, and maybe hopefully in a few months we'll be able to talk about one thing, and then maybe a few months after that, maybe another thing.
Yeah, we're getting close to some. We just, what I hate, even my wife hates it. I'm like, well, we're close to something. What is it? I'm like, I can't. Even though you're my wife, I can't tell you.
No, I'm sorry, just another question. So are they leasing the land from the city or they're buying the land from the city?
Typically, we don't want to get into leasing business, so we will sell the property typically when somebody's interested in it. And you can see what the difference in property cost was when the previous owners owned it. Now, the reason we got such a discount is they wanted to, they basically took a loss and then wrote it off because they have a whole bunch of other profit, right? So we got it at a really good price. So we should come out well in that, but we'll see. So the paving and curb replacement, you've probably seen that going around, this whole summer. I think it says this year we spent about $800,000 on sidewalks, curbs, and roads. I don't know if you've ever driven in Leavenworth, but our roads tend to be a little better maintained. We keep it smaller. I'll say we're a smaller city. And when you get to the public works folks, ask them how they, I've asked them the question about how they pick your road over your road, right? They have a whole system, right? Because that's always me, like, well, hey, how come they're not doing our road? They're doing the neighbor's road. So they have a 5-year plan, and they prioritize stuff, so they have their own methodology. It's a good one. Parks and Recreation, I don't know if you've been out to Kenneth Bernard, but if you have, you've probably seen the construction of the baseball complex that's going on out there. Was that a $5 million project or so, right?
$5 million.
Yeah, close to $5 million. Off of 4H Road.
About 2.5 miles west of town. Just take 4A straight and kind of bear left when it comes.
Yeah, if you have kids, you definitely want to go there.
It's where the fireworks show is basically.
It's kind of out there.
It's got a couple lakes, small lakes that you can fish in, playground, some soccer fields. What we're trying to do with our big master plan is move the sports-related things out to Kenneth Bernard and then make the other parks some different amenities than, baseball or soccer. So we'll move soccer, baseball out there and replace those with pickleball and, splash pads or something else that the citizens would enjoy. If you've driven on K7 by Eisenhower, you already know about this one, right? This is a project between KDOT, us, and Leavenworth. KDOT's covering 80%, and the other money, the other 20% is split up 2/3 and 1/3. If you look at the triangle there, we own 2/3 of it, I guess, and they own 1/3. A lot of people don't know that Quick Trip and Aldi's are in Lansing. I didn't know that. When I moved here, I was like, I thought Eisenhower was the split, but it's kind of, and I don't know what the history on that is. I think it might have been previous when the road wound different, and then they squared everything up, and then we ended up keeping some of the property there. Home Depot is on the Leavenworth side, unfortunately, or we'd get their tax money. Yeah. Quick Trip's doing well for us, though. Okay, the Aquatic Center, you can see it on there. I think since I've been on the city council and since 2009, the city has been crying for a water park. A lot of them are familiar with the park master plan that was done at Kenneth Bernard, which included probably one of the nice aquatic centers in the United States because it was very expensive, and we basically knew we could never do that. So that's kind of gone on and on. Then the school board had hey, we're putting a pool in the school, and they kind of went around and told people, you'll be able to come in if you approve this bond, you'll be able to use the swimming pool. And it's not, I'm not going to ding the school too hard, but from 5 to 5:15, you can do a lap swim or something. It's not like, for your kids to splash around in and have fun. It's not like an entertainment pool. So I don't think that satisfied the citizens. We've heard a lot about this issue. So in discussion with the council, I said, hey, well then, we know we can't afford it, but if the citizens say we want it, then we will increase our sales tax, right, by a little bit, and then actually basically do bonds to build the thing. So our sales tax is lower than our neighbors, so we can actually increase our sales tax, which wouldn't really affect. If you do a sales tax versus a property tax, like I'm not taxing your property or your personal property if we do it that way. right? And then anybody who drives through, stops at Quick Trip and isn't a resident of Lansing is helping to pay for your pool, right? So the sales tax spread across a lot more people than a personal property tax. So that's why we went with that route. And you'll see that on the ballot in November. It'll ask the question on whether we should increase the sales retail sales tax to build a pool. And as a governing body and like officials of the city, we're neither pro nor con of this. I mean, we're not supposed to be, saying it's a good idea or a bad idea. We're just saying it's an idea.
That's what I was gonna ask, because
Yeah.
I grew up with like, Bonner's pool, Lover's pool, and stuff, but is there, besides the property tax, I don't know, because I don't know how behind the scenes government stuff works, but is there a downside to like putting that in besides increasing property tax to 9.4?
Sales tax.
Oh, that's sales
sorry,
tax.
Not property tax, sales tax. Is there-
The downside is, honestly, they don't make money. I mean, it's not like an enterprise system that's going to make a lot of money for the city. It's an amenity, right? So you got maintenance costs that are in there. We're going to have to get lifeguards. We're going to, so there's other costs besides building it. We hope to find a different funding stream than property taxes. We don't want to do that. So there's other revenue streams that we have available that we could potentially use to do that. We've been talking to the school. We got a joint board meeting with them next month, which will discuss maybe using some of the swim team as lifeguards. So there's ways that we can kind of decrease the cost. But the bottom line is you're not making money on a pool. To be honest with you. And even after we build it, you're still going to have to buy a pool pass just to keep the maintenance and the chemicals up, right? It might be a super discount for Lansing folks, and anybody outside is going to have to pay a little more as a non-resident or something like that. We're not even sure how that's going to go yet, but
If it does get built, is that what it looks like?
this is the conceptual design, right? So we got, this was one of the features. We did do another survey on a pool, like what would you want to see? This kind of includes most of the stuff that people wanted to see. It's got some water slides, lazy river, zero entry for the younger kids, and then lap pool and a diving board. So like swim teams could use that to do lap swim. And it'll depend on what the bond interest rates are and all that stuff. If it passes, we'll then look at, okay, how much does that really generate, and then how much is it going to cost? Maybe the lap swim is that. We'll tweak the design to try to make the money work. But that's kind of a good concept for the amount of money that we predicted that would generate, if that makes sense.
Is there a concern with the sales tax that'll impact, business development or?
They're a little concern, right? But like I said, our neighbors are still higher. So, if it's a competitive thing where they want to go where the less sales tax, we're still less. We're less than Leavenworth, and we're less than Shawnee. We're less than some of the bigger places. I think Baser has a better one than.
Baser would be lower, Tongi would be lower, but yeah, even if
They
this
both have
passes,
pools.
we'd be less than Leavenworth. The one, I guess, that always sticks out in my mind is like car dealerships, because an increase of 0.4% on a car adds up. But
Yeah.
but if you're just buying a hamburger, I don't think most people would notice it.
Yeah. Okay. So where can volunteers help? Interested citizens. So these are boards and committees that we do have that are basically voluntary. So if you ever had an interest in city management or getting involved in any of these kind of things, the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, it says it's open. We have one open.
There is one opening on
Okay.
the Parks and Rec.
So that advisory board then brings things to the council and says, hey, this is what we want to do to the parks. They do a lot of the planning. Lansing Community Library has a lot of volunteers. We have a tree board. That sounds funny, but there is a program called Tree City, and you plant a tree and take care of trees, and We've been a Tree City for quite a long time, and that's kind of the pride of Parks and Recs. Kind of helps with that. Board of Zoning Appeals, they meet normally quarterly, or basically whenever they have an appeal to an ordinance. So if you hate one of the city ordinances and you want to appeal it, you would go to that board. That board would kind of help you make a decision on that. Yeah, I didn't get to go to the Board of Appeals. No, not that one. Planning Commission. These folks are the ones that do the main planning for developers. So if you're a developer and you have your plans, like you would go to the Planning Commission and say, this is how I'm going to build the project. They bless off. We delegate that authority to the Planning Commission. We still have to make the final approval on the council side, but they do all of the main planning legwork. Typically, the only thing that comes to us is if somebody wants to defer from one of our ordinances or something like that. So we really run a lot of volunteers. The Leavenworth County Fire District 1, I don't know if any of you were around when the fire district thing was going down. Yeah, how many years ago? That was 2 years ago?
It's been like 4.
Was it? Well, yeah, I wasn't the mayor, so it's more than 2. So we have a fire district here. Delaware used to run a fire department. We used to contract with them as a city of Lansing for their services. In 2003, I think there was an interlocal agreement that was put together between Lansing, the Delaware Township, a township's part of a county governing kind of border, like a city in the county. They fall under the county. So, and High Prairie Township. So us three, along with the county, who loves to dish off stuff to somebody else to take care of, right? They started this fire district. We've rolled on with this fire district since 2003. The citizens of Lansing pay about 2/3 of the funding to that fire district. And it's gotten to the point where we're paying to increase, this is my view, we're paying to increase the lowering of their insurance. So if I put a new firehouse or out in this area, then my insurance rate would be even better, right? So the townships are always wanting to get more stuff out to the townships for fire protection. Don't blame them at all. Only I don't want to pay 2/3 of that, right? And I don't want my citizens to pay 2/3 of that. That started part of the issue we were having with it. We also have had issues with them increasing their mill levy when we didn't want them to, or not letting us really know about it, which is taxing you, and we'll go over the taxes here in a minute. All the people taxing you in this county, right? So we said we were going to leave it. And you can do that by the interlocal agreement, said you could leave, and then once you leave, you got to disperse the assets. It's in the order. I don't want to go too long on this, but we basically, as soon as we said we wanted to leave, we got sued by the 2 townships. So basically, negotiations were off. They said that interlocal agreement was illegal. All kinds of craziness. The county judge agreed with them, said it was an illegal paragraph to split the assets 2/3 to us. The appellate court agreed with the lower court, so we appealed to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court overturned both the appealant and the lower court and said, no, they can leave. What are you talking about? Yeah, this is not just a simple contract thing. And oh, by the way, if they do leave, it goes by what the interlocal agreement says, which is 2/3 to the city. So there may be a different attitude when we start negotiating again with the townships. We haven't done that yet.
When did that Supreme Court pass?
Man, that was 2 months, 2 or 3 months ago.
I hadn't heard.
Yeah.
I knew the first part of the story. I didn't know where it had left off.
I want to say it was May. May, June, July. Yeah, May was somewhere around there.
It's recent-ish.
Yeah, it was recent.
So now there's going to be so does that mean that Lansing will have its own fire department?
We don't know. We don't.
Townships will have
their only decision so far was that it's not illegal for us to leave the district, right? So there might be a fire district. We might not be in it. We might have our own fire department. There might be a fire protection district where we are the fire department. They contract services for us, so we take care of their fire protection, which is what we offered to begin with, but they didn't take it. So a lot of that.
And when is that talk happening?
We still have to negotiate with the township, so that's something that we're going to do probably in the near future here.
So is that
I hope to do it this year, at least get it on their
still
agenda.
operating now then, right now? That's-
Fire District 1 is still operating as is.
And really, the firefighters themselves do a fantastic job. And if it does transition in 2025 or something like that, we really foresee it being almost exactly the same. We almost don't foresee our citizens even realizing there's much of a difference. Like Mayor McNeill had said, it's just there were times when maybe leadership over there didn't brief the city the way they should have, considering we're 2/3 of that entity. And they spent Lansing tax dollars suing us, and so I mean it was incredibly bizarre.
And it
some of the
was,
things that were going
yeah,
on.
if you weren't around, that was quite a meeting we had. So anyway, that's in the works. I mean, if you hear about the Supreme Court decision, and you may or may not ever hear about it, but that will drive the townships to negotiate with us on fire protection, because we now basically hold the cards decision-wise. That is a legal agreement. And we'll see what we do. We're hoping to get along and everybody gets good fire protection and we all don't have to spend more money, right? I mean, that's the whole idea. So this is our stats in 2002. I like to throw that up there just in case, or at least so you have it in your book. I get asked a lot. 5 city parks. You guys know about city parks behind Dairy Queen, probably. It's back there.
Baseball field?
Yeah. And then Kenneth Bernard Park is out on 4-H. Willow is by Oasis Pools over there off Gilman. And then Kelly Grove is just across from there. Kelly,
Park for Kelly Grove Park.
yeah,
Yeah, in the Methodist park?
that's about where you'd park. I mean, there's really no parking. I mean,
There's like 2 spots.
I normally park at the Methodist Park if you want to walk through there. We used to have our Autumn in the Grove there, that we now have our fall festival over in Angel Falls area on the trail. But we used to do it there. Problem there is the creek's always overflowing, and then it's got a floodplain. It's a nice nature area if you just want to go walk and not see a whole lot of people. It's a nice area. Highland is, I'm not calling it a park, but I guess we are calling it a park. Highland is Triangle Park.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I used to walk my granddaughter there,
Yeah.
like every weekend, and we called it Triangle Park. But we did improve it. I don't know if you noticed that. It was an old set of swings and.
My daughter always called it Ducky Park. I'm not sure, maybe there was like a rocking duck in it.
Oh, yeah.
At one point.
Yeah, it had those little spring things that you.
Yeah, it was Ducky
Yeah,
Park.
it had the old spinning merry-go-round, all the dangerous toys that you could play with. Yeah, it was. So it's been upgraded. It's nice. It's safer. And the kids used to run. There's 3 roads that go by that. I mean, it's like I said, a triangle. So, we put a safety fence around it. It's a lot nicer now. Okay, mill levies. Anybody heard of a mill levy? If you read your tax forms, you might have heard of a mill levy, but it's what they use to assess taxes, basically. These are all the folks who tax you, by the way. And that's a lot of people. So the city taxes you, the county taxes you, the school district does. This fire district 1 that we were talking about also does, separately. All these are taxing entities. And then the state always gets a mill levy from everybody. And that's across the board. So when you get taxed, a lot of times you'll hear, and if you listen to our budget this year, I think we may be the only people who went revenue neutral, which is a state law that was passed 2 years ago that said, hey, if your valuation in property goes up and your mill levy was here, you're making a lot more money, right? If your valuation was here and this mill levy is what gave you what you needed to run the city with, and now everybody's property went up, and I tax you at that same mill levy, I'm taxing you on all that extra value, right? So you're paying more, and we're acting like, well, we didn't raise our mill levy, which is kind of shifty. So the state noticed that and said, hey, if you are taxing them at this rate and their valuation goes up, right, then you need to lower your mill levy to get the amount you need to run the city on, right? So you lower it, and it's called zero neutral. So you lower it as much as the valuation went up, so you're not taxing everybody more, right? So this year, the governing body and Tim and our finance department did a really good job of trying to see how we could get to that. We didn't do it last year, but we said we need to try and go revenue neutral like the state's kind of asking us to do, right? So basically, I want to say, what is ours? We dropped ours five or six?
Almost 5.
Okay, almost 5 mils. So from 41.
That very bottom one, it was like an 11% decrease to our
Right.
property tax rate.
So we decreased ours by 11%, which sounds really good. But I mean, if the valuation goes up and we're revenue neutral, we're making what we need for the budget. You're just not paying more, right? The rest of these folks did not do that, and you'll see that in your taxes. Yeah, there's a lot of. I watched most of those meetings. The county one was bloody. I mean, people were going in there screaming at them. I don't know what they ended up doing.
It lowered at 0.75, so maybe like 3%.
Yeah, but they gained like 11% or 13%. So I mean, it was shadow game. If you don't know how the budget works and the mill levies work, you know, they can bamboozle you. So I'm trying to give you a little example. So what they'll do at the county level is say, okay, to run the county budget or whatever, we need 11% of the assessed value of all the property. Well, that assessment is then what's being used to drive the taxes. So you take your property value, which may have went up, or you know, typically it doesn't go down, right? Times that assessment, times the mill levy that they assessed you at, and then divide that by 100, and that's what you get property tax. Weird formula, I know. I was like, well, how does that even work, right? But if you look at an example, I used a $300,000 house. Not sure why I don't have one. And then you just do the multiplication against every one of those. It'll tell you how much property taxes you're going to actually pay. Since it was 145, I'm giving you the total, like if you're Lansing. Your taxes on a $300,000 house would be $5,000, right? So, but if you look at just the city taxes, that's only $1,400, right? So if you look at the difference there, you're being taxed by a heck of a lot more people. People don't know that, right? They're like, oh man, the city's just killing me in the property tax, but they don't know.
Are supposed to go net zero, or is that just a
Yes.
city?
No, all taxing entities were supposed to go to revenue neutral. It's R&R is what it's called, revenue neutral rate.
Is the county planning on going revenue neutral now?
I think they just passed their budget and they didn't. And I think that's why the mayor was saying so many people showed up to their meeting
Yeah.
angry.
What's the repercussion for it?
Well,
is there like a checks and balances?
Well, yeah, no, you throw them out,
Oh, okay.
right? I mean, so if you don't do it, right, if we do it, you have a hearing with your budget. If you do not do it, you have to have an open hearing. If you're not going revenue neutral, you must do an open hearing and you publish it and everything, inviting people to come and ask you why you're not going revenue neutral, right? So like we had our budget meeting when we're going revenue neutral. I think there was 2 people here and they didn't even ask us a question. So they're just like, oh, well, I guess you're going revenue neutral. Seeing those same 2 people going around to some of the other entities. I know the fire district actually increased theirs, which was frustrating. USD did too, right?
I'm not sure what they did for this year, but
I watched them vote
I mean they
on their.
The rate might have been flat. They weren't revenue neutral. I think the rate was flat.
Right. They kept the rate the same, but the valuation went up, which again, I'm telling you, that's the same as not going revenue neutral. You're taxing them at the same rate, only their valuation's a lot higher, so you're taxing them more. Yeah.
I've heard this phrase a lot, and I just never bothered to ask, but like the term mill levy, I don't know what that means.
Tim, it's like $1 for every 1,000. Is that?
Something
It doesn't
like
always
that.
come out.
The background behind that, those words.
I don't know the background behind the terminology, I guess I'll say, but it's almost not relevant. You could also say the tax rate. It'd be one and the same.
Right, it's the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably a carryover term that they never got rid of in Kansas. There's a lot of those. I mean, in government, you're like, well, what does that mean? I mean, I know how to figure it out, but it is a formula. The mill levy, you can actually figure it out. It's like I think it's $1 for every $1,000 or some assessed value.
So I have a question.
Sure.
I mean, properties
I'm taking all
are
Tim's time.
Probably like one of the highest valuations, right? We could have said it was a bubble, maybe. I still remember '08 living in New Jersey, and as fast as those houses went up, they came down.
Yeah.
So the question is, if this happens and somehow the market corrects, maybe, maybe not. But if we see a dip in this highly valuated properties, how does that inform the taxes? Do you guys also take that into consideration?
Yeah, well, we did.
Oh,
Oh wait, you want to address that?
Well, if there was a pretty significant decrease in property valuation, in order for us to get back to where we were before, that rate would need to go up, or we would need to cut, or our sales tax would need to jump higher, or whatever. But I mean, that said,
08 was a good example. I mean, in 08, I remember in 09, them talking about 08, right, and the valuation going way down. At that time, we had to increase because we had no reserve. I want to say it was like $400,000, which I think now it's close to $3 million, right? So if you don't have any reserve, you can't fluctuate. The revenue neutral rate's a good example. We did the budget. We always figure out exactly what we need. We say what it is. We do the math and go, that's an increase of X amount, and that's not revenue neutral. So what can we do? Where can we make cuts? Can we take $30K out of the reserve just so we don't have to raise taxes? And we can, because we had it, right? I mean, that's kind of to help go through these fluctuations. If you don't have a solid reserve, you're kind of in trouble in those kind of situations. So there's a lot of flexibility you have when you have a reserve that we currently do. And Tim and our finance director have been really good about.
How do we go from 300,000 to 4 million in reserve? Like, where did that come from?
it took about 10 years, but I mean, part of it was
Small
just,
build.
yeah, not spending money on foolish things, I guess.
Right.
Paying off
Some of
debt.
some of it is paying off debt. I mean, a lot of it, wastewater treatment plant, which you'll hear about. We do have a lot of debt. All right, so challenges and opportunities. Economic development is always a challenge. We live between a business center in Leavenworth and a business center in Tonganoxie that kind of for industrial kind of things, they go there. The county's been spending money on them. We always ask for money from the county, but their focus really is on bigger industry things, not retail. They did recently, after at least the Leavenworth County Development Corporation, which is pretty much funded by the county, and the Port Authority have hired somebody who looks at retail. The county has hired somebody that looks at retail to help other cities who don't have these industrial parks that they can fill up with a big box, store.
So I have a question on that. Does Lansing not have space for the need to maybe look at going after Amazon warehouse or this big industrial corporation?
Well, I mean, honestly, we don't have the property, for one thing. maybe if the county bought the property, I mean, we have that small business center, but I mean, we don't have a whole lot of property.
I know long-term, like, we'd be open to having an industrial park with the capacity for something like that, maybe on Gilman or McIntyre in the future.
Other side.
But I mean, when you think about that McIntyre area, we don't have any sewer lines down there. So,
Right.
I mean, we'd need to spend millions of dollars to get a sewer line down there. And so, I mean, there's
Infrastructure.
We would love something like Amazon to come here, but it just takes a few years of planning to get there.
And it takes a lot of money. I mean, the infrastructure itself is extremely costly. To get sewer out to McIntyre is crazy expensive. And we have some designs, and we've got some money to help with the design to get it there. People have bought that property out there, but I mean, if you don't have sewer, I mean, that was a big focus in 2009 when I got on here. I'm like, hey, you know, I watched a couple of the developments not go in because the sewer couldn't take, you know, the additional flow. Not our wastewater plant, but the actual pipes, because they weren't built for it. They didn't predict that something was going to go there. So we've really, over the last 10, 15 years, built up the infrastructure. The sewers are all good. The road network's really good. So we'll get there. It takes time. I mean, a lot of time.
Sewer up my street.
Yeah.
We're on septic. I don't like it.
Or are you off of?
Sycamore Ridge.
Yeah.
Oh.
I used to live right around the corner there. Yeah.
Depending on where you live, I know
I think
there's a manhole.
I want to
by that
say
first house.
if you're septic, are they in that or are they grandfathered? I thought if they had to replace their septic.
But it has to be within a certain
Distance
number of
from
feet
the-
away, and that's where we have that manhole by that first house.
The
on
gray house on the corner,
Oh, yeah.
there's a manhole. Right.
Yeah, so I mean that if that house.
How far are you
wanted
from
to,
there?
They could tap in pretty easily.
How far are you from there?
We're up towards the top of the street.
Oh. All right, that's more than 100 feet.
I know.
You're probably not getting there. But we don't know. If that other side develops, we might be able to get sewer down to go back down the other way. So, yeah. One of our other big opportunities is park improvements. We have a pretty good park plan. We're funding that with a sales tax that was done 17? Yeah, I was going to say like 5 years ago. Solid waste services. Yeah. We are about to pay that off at some point. I mean, we've been, ever since I've been on the council, it's like, oh yeah, we're almost, paying it off. We used to have to take money out of the general fund to help pay the debt that built that facility out there that you'll see. But we only operate that at like 50%, 45%. So we have a lot of growth still in that property. And Tim, you can tell them when it's going to be actually paid off. Wastewater expansion is, again, something that we've been designing. Anytime we get money from the county, we try to design to go further out. We're working on the one that's going to McIntyre. And then streets and sidewalks, always an issue. Everybody wants a new street. Sidewalks, funny, weird, I would say, is that there's neighborhoods that have no sidewalks, but kids are walking on the street, and then, we try to say, hey, we want sidewalks, and then you have to actually ask that resident if you can take part of their property in there, and they'll vote no on it. And I'm like, okay, whatever, So, we've tried to put sidewalks in some of the older neighborhoods, and then,
Yeah, we didn't have any, where we do now, we moved this past summer, but our original one, where did we put it?
Fawn Valley.
I don't know how to describe, it's Fawn
Fawn
Valley,
Valley.
but it's at the very end of a cul-de-sac.
Oh, right.
It just goes all the way back, kind of a hidden area.
yeah,
But yeah, no, there's no sidewalks. There's
Yeah.
20 kids, walk up the street to the middle school.
yeah.
So are there still plans in the works, like to take the road development further on south with sidewalks and everything?
Yes, there is. Where that money's coming from, we don't know, right? So the original money was like a federal earmark from somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who got like the federal guys to give us money down to the state, and then the state said, hey, you got X amount of years to actually spend that or you're losing it. And I forget how much it was, but it was a lot.
Like $2.2 million.
Yeah, it was a couple $1 million. Of course, that was
A long time ago. But I mean, if you guys ever hear like that term pork barrel spending,
Yeah, that was it.
We were one of those projects.
Yeah.
It was a $2.2 million project.
We were the pork.
That chipped. Yeah, we were the pork that chipped
Hanging
in for
on.
DeSoto. Is the library open? Should we offer folks 5 minutes if
rest?
they need to?
I don't think the library's open.
Okay.
I took too long.
I mean, it's up to
Sorry.
you guys. 5 minutes, we can give you a break.
I
or
can-
we power through
I
and
can
get
fly
out of here.
through because a lot of my stuff overlaps with the makers.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so Tim has served as Lansing City Administrator since June of 2015, and before he came to Lansing, he was the City Administrator of Ellsworth, Kansas. That's out towards Hayes, from 2009 to 2015. So what were you, about 18 years old when you started in Ellsworth? He has got a BS in Political Science and a Master's of Public Administration from the University of South Dakota. He's married to his wife, Allison. They have 3 sons, Everett, Ben, and Harrison, and all of them are in school now, right? Harrison started kindergarten. Okay. And in his free time, he enjoys traveling, attending sporting events, going to concerts, and spending time with family. Tim Vandall.
Yeah. Well, I am going to try to get everybody out of here by 7:40, but feel free to ask questions and if you want. So yeah, a little bit of background behind me. Went to school at the University of South Dakota, and I graduated in 2009, and there's not a lot of city management jobs in South Dakota, so I applied at a small town in the middle of Kansas and ended up there. I was there for 6 years, loved it, and then when the Lansing position came open, we were really excited about it. Excited about being so close to Kansas City, being in a city with a great school district, being in a place that's one of the safest cities in the metro. So we applied to come to Lansing, and here I am 7 years later. So really enjoy living in Lansing. Our kids are 5th grade, 3rd grade, and kindergarten. So yeah, maybe some of our kids see each other around at school sometimes.
What class is the third, or what teacher is it?
My 3rd grader is in Mrs. Turner's class, Mrs. Spellman Turner, I think. So. Oh, okay. Yep. Very cool. So one of the things that's kind of unique about being a city administrator, I have 9 different bosses, and one of the things it's sometimes incredibly challenging when there are times when I will have 4 or 5 bosses being very passionate about one thing, and I will have 3 or 4 bosses being very passionate about something else. The mayor gave that example about the mask issue a couple years ago, and my opinion is whatever the council tells me to do. Sometimes I'll give them recommendations, or if they'll ask me to do research on things, I'll do that. But my job is to implement the direction of the council. So like Mayor had said, every year they give me a list of goals, they give me feedback, things they want me to accomplish, and that's what we do. That's part of my job. So on top of having 9 bosses on top of me, I have 8 department heads underneath me. So the departments that report to me, Public Works, our police department, Community and Economic Development, that's fences and permits and things like that. Our library, finance department, the city clerk, Parks and Recreation, and the wastewater department. Like the mayor had said, fire department, that's a separate entity, and that's something else that would come up once in a while. If someone has a complaint about the police department, I oversee the police chief. I can talk to him about improving his performance or improving the performance of his officers. If someone would have a complaint about the fire district, we really have no say in that. And there were times when the fire department would maybe conflict a bit with our police department or conflict a little bit with our building inspector, and that would be kind of challenging sometimes. So we are looking forward to having them on the team and being all under one umbrella. One of the things that I love about local government, and the mayor alluded to this too, there's no politicism in it. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. If you want a pool, you can vote for that pool. If you want to put in wastewater lines, you can do that. Doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. And that's what I love. I hate seeing Washington, D.C. gridlock. I hate seeing Topeka gridlock. I really love local government. One of the other things, though, that's it's incredibly challenging, but also sometimes I really enjoy it. I do so many different things throughout the course of the day. My days are always different. My day today started off with an HR issue. Then it was followed by a guy complaining about a speeding ticket. Then there was a zoning issue that came up. So, I mean, throughout the course of my day, I'm dealing with a lot of different things. So it keeps me on my toes. Financial status. I'll zip through this pretty quick, but like the mayor had said, we recently lowered our property tax rate. And so I think maybe the one in the mayor's spreadsheet was the 2022 one. But when I did this is for 2023. So if your value on your home stayed flat and it was $300,000, I mean, that'd save people, I think, $175 or $180 a year. So that's a pretty big savings thanks to the city council. That said, there's not a lot of people whose value stayed flat the last few years. And that's one of the things that was in their mind. So the general fund, that term gets tossed around a lot, but that's kind of most of our basic government departments: police, parks and recreation, library, street maintenance, capital improvements, things like that. Sales taxes, we touched on this a little bit too. So Lansing's current rate is 8.95%. So Leavenworth's is 9.5 right now. So like we were talking about, even if that pool passes, our rate is going to be a little bit less. We haven't really had any negative feedback from business owners yet about that idea. And again, I can see maybe car dealerships being unhappy with that, but when you think about it, Martin's Auto in Leavenworth or Zeck Ford, they would be paying a higher sales tax rate anyway as well. So we feel pretty good about where our sales tax rate is. One of the other things that's kind of unique too, and this is an economic development tool we utilize for the Dodge dealership in town, community improvement districts, that's levying a special sales tax that you can pay back to the owner of the property to make improvements. So if you look at that property, they recently installed new lighting. They recently paved the parking lot. So that's part of a special sales tax that we give them to improve their property. One of the other things that I'll say too, I'll give these guys a little bit of a shout out. That's our biggest sales tax generator in Lansing, Main Street, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram. If they ever left Lansing, I mean, it would blow a pretty big hole in our budget. So we're pretty thankful to have these guys in town, and they do a pretty good job. So if you're in the market for a Jeep or a Ram, be sure to check them out.
So how did we fare during the lockdown?
You know, I think they actually did okay. I know they didn't have as much inventory maybe 9 months ago, but I think it seemed like during COVID, I think they did okay.
So is luxury and imports, is that Leavenworth?
That is Leavenworth.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
It's
one
across the
corner.
street from, because it's across the street from.
in, and where all that stuff is so weird too. So 3 of those 4 quadrants are in Lansing, and luxury and imports is in Leavenworth. But that traffic light is operated by the city of Leavenworth, even though they only have 1 of the 4 quadrants. So, and I think part of that is they just have so much more staffing, and I think 20 or 30 years ago it was easier for them to say, hey, we'll take it on, because 20 or 30 years ago Lansing was 7,000 or 8,000 people. So getting back to that example of a $300,000 home, so based on that new property tax rate that the city council just approved, $1,257 of that goes to the city of Lansing. Once in a while, people will call me, and part of my job is talking to angry people. I've accepted that, right? But somebody had called me frustrated a couple months ago, and they started off their conversation by saying, I pay $5,000 a year in property taxes to the city. And I didn't say this, but I was kind of thinking to myself, well, if a $300,000 home is $1,200, then this guy's home must be 1.5. And in reality, his home was probably valued at this, but he was lumping together what he pays for all property taxes to the school district, to the county, to the fire district. He was just kind of throwing that out there. So, but I like to break it down like this. So of that $1,257 you would pay to the city of Lansing, about 24% of that goes into our debt service fund. So then break that down even further. 24% of this number, $301. So that's debts, DeSoto Road, when we purchased Town Center, infrastructure improvements, things like that. So in this scenario, $300, so a little less than $1 a day goes to debt service. The library is in a separate fund. So if you have a $300,000 home, about $98 a year goes to the library. The general fund, and I tried to do one of our bigger funds and also one of our smaller ones. $857 would go to the general fund. That's what funds community and economic development, city administrator, police department, finance department, things like that. The biggest chunk of our general fund is the police department and municipal court, so about 33% of that. So if you break it down even further, so law enforcement in Lansing, if you have a $300,000 home, about $285 a year, so not too bad. Then one of the smaller ones, streetlights, all those streetlights you guys see, that's about $24 a year. So, you know, I get that question a lot, and I've heard different explanations. Someone was telling me it has something to do with some type of supply shortage, but I'm not positive. And so here's the other thing too. Evergy is the one who oversees all of those. We pay Evergy every month for however many street lights we have. But it's Evergy. Like if one burns out and people contact us, we contact Evergy right away. So.
So I thought the police and municipal courts, don't they also generate funds from tickets?
Kinda, yeah.
I always thought they were self-sufficient with all of the court fees.
Yes and no. So, like our police department, that total budget's probably like $2 million, and in tickets, I want to say we made maybe $350,000 last year, something like that. So I mean, it certainly offsets it, but it doesn't pay for itself. And one of the other things that I'll tell you. Yeah.
You don't want that either, right? And there's a balance there too. It's like
one of the other things that I will tell you is one of my pet peeves. I will go into a couple of my pet peeves while we're here tonight. There are some people who say, "Oh, Lansing's just a speed trap, whatever," and it bugs me when people say that, because then you go back and say, "Okay, we had roughly $350,000 in tickets and fines last year." So you break that down a little and say even round it up to $365, $1,000 a day in tickets and fines. How much is the average ticket? $100 maybe? So that's 10 tickets a day? You know what I mean? So it's, in 10 tickets over 24 hours doesn't seem excessive to me, I guess. But again, that's one of my pet peeves is when people say Lansing's just a speed trap. I think part of that is our main street is a state highway. And I think sometimes people maybe lose focus, and if they're going 12, 13 miles and over on our main street, they do sometimes get tickets. So, what's that?
You haven't been to Virginia?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. One of the other things, we talked a little bit about reserves, and right now our city council is really good about wanting to retain our reserves and have a strong financial status. We have a good bond rating from Moody's. Sometimes you hear Moody's gave this state this whatever rating. We have an A1 rating, which is pretty good for a city our size. But one of the things, I like to give this example, and actually my percentages are from last year. I don't think you'll see interest rates like that right now. But this is kind of an example. If we really depleted our reserves, say we have $3 million in reserves right now, and the council said, let's spend $2 million on this hill of magic beans, and all of a sudden our $3 million in reserves went to $1 million in reserves, we'd get a lot worse interest rate on any type of debt that we would issue. And just a little bit of a change on a project of this scale, $6 million, I mean, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars over 20 years. So we certainly try to have a good financial, a good bond rating, a strong financial footing for the city, and it really does pay off with our interest rates. So one of the other things, I'll tell you guys another pet peeve of mine. I'm just so proud of Family Eye Care and Mutual Savings and a lot of those new businesses in town. But sometimes when I hear people say, oh, it's just another bank, or oh, it's just another medical clinic or something like that, I do get frustrated, because even though this is a quote-unquote small medical clinic, I mean, a building like this is over $1 million. These guys are investing a lot of money in Lansing, and we're incredibly excited about that. This is going to be 4 or 5 new jobs in Lansing. So think about it like this. If there's 4 or 5 people living and working in Lansing, they're more likely to go to our restaurants. They're more likely to pump gas at Petro Deli or Quick Trip. They're more likely to go to Wallula Church if they're living and working in Lansing. So that's one of those things where I get sometimes frustrated when people say, oh, it's just a medical clinic, or oh, it's just a bank. This is more jobs, more property taxes, and it's stuff going on in Lansing. So I'm passionate about that. One of the other things, I guess by now this is about a year and a half old, but Club Car Wash was built a while back. One of the other things that I think was pretty interesting, and I think it was really good planning on our Public Works Director's part and our City Council's part. If you guys remember when Co-op was at that intersection, there were 2 entrances off of K7 and 3 entrances off of Eisenhower, or vice versa. But so anyway, you would have this big lot with 5 entrances off of a state highway. And the more entrances you have, it kind of becomes more dangerous. So when Club Car Wash and Quick Trip came in, we were able to consolidate 5 entrances into 2. So that means it's better flow of traffic. That means it's safer. The other thing that was also interesting too, Aldi was on a pressurized sewer line that went south. Co-op was on Leavenworth's sewer that went west, and then Tractor Supply was on a different sewer line. So we had 3 different businesses so close to each other that were all on different sewer lines. So when Quick Trip was being built, we spoke to Leavenworth and we tried to get our ducks in a row, and we merged all of those sewer lines onto one. So we think that's a bit more efficient. And actually, Club Car Wash, a great business in Lansing, generates a lot of money in sewer. So that's been a really positive investment for the city.
Hey, Tim,
Yeah.
What are they doing right past on Eisenhower with the road?
Yep.
Right there at Club Car Wash.
So that's part of the K7 and Eisenhower project, that intersection project. And so part of that, there's going to be a dedicated right turn lane to go on to Eisenhower. And so they didn't want that dedicated right-hand turn lane to just go into one of the existing lanes. So there's also a new lane on Eisenhower as well.
They had to basically build a little bridge over the creek. So
Yeah.
Okay, the creek part was what was throwing me. I didn't know if something.
In-
Last time I saw it was Angel Falls, or
Yeah.
Angel Falls Trail, and I was like, a trail?
There's a big box culvert there that, and again, where that project is unique. Leavenworth had a say in that project. Like, that box culvert is kind of theirs. That was something they really pushed for. But yeah, the project is for the most part in Lansing. So. Mutual Savings on K7, another project that was maybe a year and a half old, but another building in Lansing that's generating property taxes. It's 4 or 5 new jobs. And this was a vacant lot for years and years. So again, we're excited about that. The other thing that's interesting too, I think sometimes people don't realize we have an industrial park off of Gilman, and a lot of times people might not go there unless they have a reason to go there, I guess. But we're really proud of our businesses out there too. This business has been there about 2 years, Ducks Carpet Cleaning. Again, a couple of jobs in Lansing, but they're paying property taxes. Kind of like we talked about, if you're living and working in Lansing, you're more likely to go shopping in Lansing. You're more likely to do other things in Lansing. So yeah, they do a fantastic job. I think they've cleaned the carpets at City Hall, and just a great business to have in town. Yes. Yep. And then, so this is right kitty corner from Ducks Carpet Cleaning. This came in a year and a half ago. One of the things that we would always tell people about Quick Trip, that project took 5 or 6 years. I mean, it was long. And a big part of that was Leavenworth County Co-op was right there. And they didn't want to go out of business. They wanted to stay in business. So they had to find a location to go before Quick Trip could build their new gas station there. So we worked with Co-op. They built a beautiful facility on 3 lots in our industrial park off of Gilman. And so I know some people were telling me, like, this is the best place in the county to get gasoline. I guess someone was telling me it's the most pure gasoline. I don't know if that's true. But farmers, I think farmers like it. But anyway, we also feel like this location is a better fit than their previous location. If you guys remember, they had those big propane tanks right on Eisenhower where thousands of vehicles are driving every day. So we feel like this is a better location for them. So again, give them some love. Go pump some gas out there. We're proud of them. They're doing a good job. This was something that happened. It opened earlier this year. Big sales tax generator for Lansing. We're incredibly excited about that. This is another one that was a vacant lot for decades. Businesses like this, they generate a lot of interest in nearby properties as well. So we're incredibly excited about Harbor Freight. One of the things that's interesting, and again, I think part of my role and part of Mayor's role is sometimes hearing from citizens who maybe are against something. We did have some people reach out to us who live in that neighborhood behind Harbor Freight. They really didn't want this there. They didn't want Harbor Freight on that lot. And it was challenging to try to explain to them, this is a vacant property on a busy state highway. It's zoned commercial. You know, that property was there when you bought your house. So I think there were a couple of people who were frustrated when that came in, but also another component of that, some of our city's rules, our rules are a bit more, I don't want to say strict, but maybe strict is the right word. They're a little bit more strict than they were 20 years ago. So I mean, if you look at Harbor Freight now, you see all of that landscaping. You see a nice privacy fence in the back. I mean, Harbor Freight had to build that because of our rules. And I hope that made the people on those streets back there feel a little bit better about it. And we're trying to keep on them to make sure the property remains clean. And they've done a really good job with that. But again, it's interesting looking at buildings that are built in the last few years versus buildings in Lansing that were maybe built 20 or 30 years ago. One thing, I'll talk about our positives, and I'll talk about our areas where we'd like to improve as well. Residential construction is a little bit slower than we'd like. It seems like whenever there are lots available in Lansing, people build on them. People want to live in Lansing. The problem is there's just not a lot of open lots in town. I want to say, over a 12-month span, we'll have 6 new duplexes built in town. That's okay. We're excited about that. Most of those are on Reagan Drive, and it's a 55 and older subdivision over there. And I want to say there's going to be 6 or 7 single-family homes built in Lansing this year. One of the things that's incredibly challenging, though, to build a brand new subdivision, it's the developer who builds the streets, puts in the sewer line, puts in the water lines. So I mean, they're investing millions and millions of dollars. And say they invest millions of dollars to put in the roads, sewer lines, and water lines, and say the housing market tanks. there's a lot of risk that goes into to building a subdivision. So that's been one of the challenges that we've had, is getting new neighborhoods. We're doing okay with 6 or 7 new homes and 6 new duplexes, but we'd like to see more new neighborhoods and subdivisions built.
Is there a lot of land for those type of developments, or
Yeah.
like it seems like Lansing's kind of
Riley
between all
owns it
these
all.
towns? Is there room to grow?
Yeah, I think so. I know one of the properties that we were pretty excited about that was always very prominent was that Ryan Farm property. So that's kind of that big, 4-H in DeSoto, and it's like 140 acres. And that was for sale, and an LLC out of Texas purchased it. And so we don't know a lot about them. That's one of the things that's sometimes challenging about shadowy LLCs. We don't know a lot about them, but we're
What could you build on that property? Is it just for housing, or is it
I-
do something else with it?
I want to say, I mean, it's zoned ag, but I think in our future land use plan, it's residential. Yeah, and the one thing that I'll say,
Request to rezone it, like if they wanted to put multifamily or whatever, but they have to come through the council to get
Yeah.
it rezoned.
What about here, the vacant lot?
so the 8 acres right across from City Hall, the gentleman who owns that is kicking around ideas to expand. That's that 55 and over neighborhood, and he's trying to figure out what it would take to expand that. So that's one of the ideas that's out there right now. It's one of those things, I think, maybe to make it pencil out so he's generating profit, he's probably going to ask the city for incentives and things like that.
Does the city have incentives?
Yeah, and we try to work with people on things like that. But again, if it's $2 million to build those roads and sewer lines, maybe we're able to help out with a couple $100,000. But that example we talked about when Mayor was talking, that sewer line to McIntyre, where the Amazon warehouse example. So we have some engineering plans on getting that sewer line out there, and it's $4 million just for sewer. So I mean, it's stuff like that. Yeah, we're trying to get the county to pay for that. But things are just so incredibly expensive. But even if the county would want to work with us and tag team it, we'd be really happy with that too. One thing that we're pretty excited about, though, speaking of residential, if you've seen directly east of the gas station finish line, there's some dirt work going on. There's going to be some townhomes built there. Hopefully that'll be done in the midway point of next year. And we feel like this kind of fits a niche in Lansing. One of the things that we would hear about is there's not a lot of places for people starting out to live. And so this is an opportunity for someone, if they want to rent a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom townhome. I think the price point is going to be around $1,000 a month. This might be a really good option for them. Not only that, too, I mean, depending on what the person does, it would have great walkable access to nearby K7 businesses. So, I mean, if you're a cook or a waitress at IHOP or whatever, this might be a place where you'd want to live. So right now, I think it would be between 20 to 24 units. But I know long-term, this shrubby area back there, I think he's going to ask for this to be rezoned as well, and that might be another 20 units back there as well.
Currently zoned non-residential back there?
For some reason, and this shrubby piece used to be owned by the hotel, and the hotel sold it to this gentleman. He hoped to rezone it. And I think the council wanted to see the finished product before they agreed to rezone this back point. So eventually, I would imagine this will be rezoned. But he did approach the council about that a couple years ago, and they kind of slowed him down and said, well, let's just see this part first. So, this is the area that you had mentioned, Mr. Boland. But so this is something we applied for this grant when we knew Quick Trip was coming to town. that intersection was so incredibly busy, even when co-op was there, that we knew once Quick Trip went there, it would just be gangbusters. So we applied for this grant. We were fortunate to get it, a $1.6 million grant from the Department of Transportation. It went out to bid earlier this year. Lina Weaver Construction out of Lansing got it. It was a $1.6 million contract. The other thing that maybe people sometimes forget with road projects, sometimes we have to buy land or easements from people. That takes time. We have to move utilities. So there were some road slowdowns there last year that people got kind of frustrated with, but that wasn't even part of the construction process. That was just moving utilities. And one of the other things that I'll say about moving utilities too, when it's a road project that we're using taxpayer dollars on, we can talk to Lina Weaver Construction and say, hey, move those cones on Friday afternoon so people can jet back and forth on K7. If it's Evergy doing it, Evergy can kind of say, okay, city, we'll do what we want. Or if it's Kansas Gas Service, they can kind of say, okay, city, we'll do what we want. Utilities are just different beasts, whereas once it's something that we have control over, that we're spending taxpayer dollars on, they're more receptive to listening to us. I was going to say, I think I hear that. So this project, one of the things it'll be adding is an additional northbound left turn lane onto Eisenhower. So when you're traveling north on K7, right now there's one turn lane, but if you're there at 5 p.m., it gets so backed up. So there will be 2 turn lanes there. So I guess one thing that even I will have to get used to, if I'm in one of those lanes and I want to go to Quick Trip, I'll need to be in that right left-hand turn lane. So be thinking of that. A new southbound right turn lane onto Eisenhower. That's what we were talking about a minute ago. So one of the things that I think would be so frustrating to people is when they were traveling south on K7, if the car in front of you was turning right, you had to slow down and wait for that guy to turn right. Whereas if you have a dedicated right turn lane to go onto Eisenhower, those 2 main traffic lanes can just keep going. So that'll keep traffic flowing a lot faster.
When is this supposed to be done?
They're telling us Thanksgiving.
Tell us when?
Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay.
Wait, turn the recording on?
Yeah, right? So, there's also an additional turn lane north of TSC. We're really encouraging folks to use detours whenever possible. So I live on the east side of K7, so I know a lot of times when I'm traveling back from that area, I loop around and go on K5, so I don't have to go in that area. Another thing we're encouraging folks to do, we just improved DeSoto Road. DeSoto Road is 40 miles an hour. You can zip back and forth on DeSoto Road pretty quick. So use detours if you can. Or if you absolutely need to go to that area, one of the things that you could do, rather than going to Tractor Supply at 5 p.m. when it's incredibly busy and congested at that intersection, go to Tractor Supply at 3 p.m. if you can. Go to Quick Trip at 1 p.m. or 11 a.m. if you can. Try not to use those businesses during peak hours. Getting back to what you'd said a moment ago, one of the things that we've heard feedback from our residents on, because we've been telling people it's going to be done by Thanksgiving, they've been focusing so much on the Eisenhower portion of that, because Home Depot, corporate Home Depot, I think was pretty strict about they needed that entrance open in 60 days or 90 days or something like that. So they're really trying to get that done so Home Depot doesn't come down hard on them. And then it sounds like they're just going to go gangbusters on K7, and it's going to be congested. It's going to be messy for a couple months, but yeah. Parks and Rec Master Plan. So this was planned out and designed in 2019. Then we had to hit pause for a little while because of COVID, and we weren't sure what it would do to our funding streams and everything. But, and I've got a fun picture after this, but our Parks and Rec Master Plan, it talked a lot about Bernard Park, what we wanted to see out there, talked a lot about City Park, talked a lot about Willow Park. Largely paid for by special sales taxes approved by Lansing voters in 2017. So if you guys remember that, I want to say it was like a spring special election, and it passed like 51 or 52% to 48%. But so it's kind of the same thing that we're asking voters to do for the pool. If they want to vote for it, that's fantastic. Or if they vote no, they vote no. But that was approved by our voters by 51 or 52. It was pretty tight. But it paid for new ball fields out at Bernard Park. One of the other things that took us a lot longer to get Bernard Park going, there was no utilities out there. There's no water, there was no sewer, there's no nothing. So it was a little bit more expensive than we originally wanted to. But we're excited. There's water out there now. We're going to be able to irrigate our ball fields. There's going to be concession stands. There's going to be restrooms, and there's room to grow. And we're hoping to have our soccer fields out there eventually. And then once our soccer fields and our baseball fields are all out at Bernard Park, we can have that splash pad, destination playground at City Park. At Willow Park, hopefully we'll see pickleball, restrooms, a walking trail, and a small shelter. So again, all of these things cost money. And I want to say, like, the estimates for Willow Park, it was well over $1 million or maybe even a couple million. And so Bernard Park is kind of that priority right now. But this is where we're at now with Bernard Park. And I should have put these two slides next to each other. But I think it's cool looking at this picture this is, I think, a week or two ago. And then this was our plan that we did in 2019, almost exactly the same. You see these two fields back here for future use. Those two fields back there. And we worked with a company that all they do is design ball fields and parks and things like that. And they thought about all of these things that I wouldn't think about, the city council wouldn't think about. So these are the two smallest fields. These are for the T-ball kids. And one of the things they talked about is putting these fields in this location right here. Does anyone know why you'd want to put those fields right there? Any guesses? What's that?
Easier to get to. You have small kids.
Yeah, that's exactly what they said. They talked a lot about, T-ball, that's probably the most kids playing, which also means it's the most grandparents and parents coming to watch. So that's going to take up all of this space in the parking lot. So it's easier for these folks to get to. Whereas once you get to older kids, you might only have one or two teams. Whereas I want to say in T-ball, we had like 9 different teams in Lansing last year. So they think about things like that a guy like me wouldn't think about. So.
And do you guys view these as revenue generators of some sort, or is it?
Probably not. I know one of our council members was really encouraging us to do tournaments here, and we would love that. And I love Lansing. Mayor, I love Lansing. But one of the things that's challenging is, there's places in Johnson County that have more fields, hotels, and more restaurants. And so it's hard for us to compete with these fields with maybe fields that are in Johnson County. So it's possible we're going to try to get tournaments. We're going to do everything we can to get tournaments, but it's possible some of them might still go a little bit further south. But so I don't foresee them generating revenue. So.
And the surrounding, I'm sorry, I'm still trying to get familiar with
Yeah.
the area.
Mhm.
So the surrounding greenery,
Yep.
what are those zoned residential at some point, or what do we hope to?
Yeah, so this is all part of the park. So there's like a bike trail back there, and you can't see it on here, but so it would be probably over here.
All over here is soccer fields.
Yeah.
Already there. Yeah, you just drive in this road, there's already a parking lot here. a
Yep.
fishing pond here.
And there's a little park there, yeah, fishing pond.
Oh, yeah, there's like 3 little park, yeah.
The trails
Yeah,
aren't
especially for little kids.
Not right now. And even when they are, they're like kind of dirt trails.
There's like a 3-mile trail.
Yeah, like if you're a mountain biker or your kids like mountain biking, and they're pretty cool, but they're not concrete or anything. Those were the main things I had. But I'm open to answering any questions. I know the mayor's open to answering any questions as well. We're so happy to have you guys here. We're passionate about Lansing. There's a lot of really good things going on in the community.